Before we get started with this week's episode, just want to go over a topic that happened while we were recording this podcast tonight. One of the recurring themes on this episode are drums and drummers. And while this podcast was being recorded, news had hit social media that Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters had passed away on a South American tour at the age of 50. I have been a Foo Fighters fan since the first record. Such an amazing drummer, and it actually takes an amazing amount of skill to join a band with arguably one of the great rock drummers of our generation and be that guy's drummer. For Taylor Hawkins to be someone that Dave Grohl could turn over the kit to just really shows his skill, his ability. And then he proved his ability as a frontman. He could sing, he could play. Just seemingly an all-around great musician and a great human being. So before we get started, I just wanted to take a moment, say rest in peace, Taylor Hawkins. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Stuck in the Middle podcast, the podcast dedicated to the music, movies, and culture of Generation X.
What is up, slackers, and welcome back to another episode of the Stuck in the Middle podcast. I'm very excited about this week's episode because for the first time on the show, I'm going to have a guest joining me. And this is kind of exciting because not only have I known this person for a really long time, but I wasn't expecting my first guest to actually have a legitimate bio on Amazon where they have commerce. So I'm being joined this week by Justin Piccirillo. Now, he did an audio cameo. Well, I mentioned his name on the very first episode, kind of a little bit of a harbinger of what was to come. But Justin is a teacher, an artist, a political cartoonist, currently the drummer for Bad Dog, classic rock cover band, an accomplished genealogist and historian, as well as the author of the book Hubbard Park as part of the Images of America series. And on top of all that, Justin is a husband and a father, and he certainly keeps busy. So with all that you have going on, thank you for taking the time to join me this week, Justin.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm super psyched to be here. You know, it's old friends getting back together again. This is great.
Well, so when I first started, the concept, I was being somewhat nostalgic, as I'd mentioned. It's going to be, 30 years since we graduated from our high school. So just so anyone listening who doesn't know, we have 3 high schools in our home city of Meriden. We have Maloney, where I went to school, then our crosstown rivals, which are Platt High School. But right across the way from Platt was Wilcox, and that was the technical high school, which is where Justin went.
Right.
So before that, I was like, come on, Justin, you got to go to Maloney. He was like, I'm going to go to Wilcox because that's what I want to do, and it certainly worked out for him. But how long have we known each other, Justin?
Oh, geez. I'm going to say somewhere around end of 7th grade, about 7th grade. I say we're about 12 or 13 years old. You're a little bit older than me, so I'm going to say I was about 12. You're about 13.
Oh, that's right, because you're October.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and I'm June. That's right.
Right.
All right. Well,
Would that be right? I mean, I'm thinking like 7th grade, 8th grade. We were in the same class in 8th grade, but I think we knew each other in 7th grade a little bit.
We did. But one of the things that we'll get into a little bit, in another later podcast. But I knew when you guys were first jamming with the one band, and at the 7th grade talent show, your lead singer was Ricky Seppa.
Yep.
And that was that incarnation of the band. And then we started to become friendly then. And was that when we had? Oh gosh, what was 7th grade science? Was that Mr. Town?
Oh, Mr. Town was 8th grade. Oh,
was that 8th grade?
Remember that?
Oh man, I thought that was 7th because I just know 7th I was constantly in trouble. But we could go to Mr. Town is that, both of us were interested in art in varying degrees, and here you are, you've made a career out of it. I reference Kevin Smith movies, and he had the movie Chasing Amy, and they talked about how there were pencilers and there was inkers. So I would be a really rudimentary penciler, and I would hand over a picture to Justin, and all of a sudden it comes back like this fine piece of work, just an absolute amazing piece of art. So they're not just tracers. Inkers are not just tracers. But yeah, so I mean, we go back to middle school, and we started bonding over things like, music and art and those kind of things. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Matt Morgan was kind of the guy that got us together. So for those people out there, Matt Morgan is actually on Broadway. He's made a career at being on Broadway and off Broadway, and I think we were connected through him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Matt really for all of my elementary went to Roger Sherman. You went to Pulaski, right?
Yeah.
So Matt and I, he lived on Pratt Street. I lived on Arch Parkway, so we could cut through some woods and walk down there. So yeah, we walked home together and became friends. We did Boy Scouts together, but we also used to sing on the street corner on Pratt Street.
What? I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? So
hey, knowing you for 30-something years, I never knew that.
So Matt and I, sometimes with his sisters, and there was someone else in the neighborhood. I forget who it was, but we would go do like New Edition songs. Because like New Edition was like the thing. So it's like, Cool It Now and like Mr.
Cool
Telephone Man, And of course, Matt can sing. I can kind of sing, but like he was just phenomenal even back then. So we would do this whole kind of, song and dance man kind of thing. And occasionally people would throw some coins our way and we go get candy up the street.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember he was behind Domino's, and I remember we used to go over there to drop him off because there were a lot of times we all stayed after school at Washington. And so my mom would pick him up and she would drop him off there. And he'd come over every now and then, play in the backyard or whatever. But so, yeah, I think it's through him that we actually met each other. And, like you said, at the time, Don and I were so Don Horton, the guitar player, and I were jamming with Ricky. And even before that, we had another band actually before that. And that's another whole story. But that's when you came in the mix.
So wait a minute. Wait, you had a band before even that incarnation?
Yeah. So the story goes that when we were in 6th grade, I didn't know Don and Don didn't know me. So I'm talking about Don Horton. So Don Horton, you're out there somewhere. I actually just left the house an hour ago. We just jammed. So it's funny, we were in 6th grade and I don't know, somehow I saw he had a book, how to play guitar and, oh, you're a guitar player now. I had a drum set. I really, never really played with anybody. It was really up in my bedroom, and that was that. And put on the record, not a CD, not a tape. It was a record. And I said, I'm a drummer. And lo and behold, we had a band. That was in 6th grade. And then before the band with Ricky, we had a band with Brian Albano. I don't know if you remember the name Brian Albano.
I do remember Brian Albano.
And Brian was supposed to play that 7th grade talent show, but he was also doing the 7th grade talent show as a comedian. I don't know if you remember this.
Oh my gosh. And
he couldn't double dip into that, into the lineup there. So he chose to be a comedian instead. And Ricky would just say, I'll try it. And so I think my dad taught him the bass line and the voice. And I have it on tape somewhere. I mean, I'll have to pull that one out.
So that's one thing. Program. You have everything. So for the listeners, Justin has an amazing memory, but also is like the most organized back rat ever. Like you have everything in its place. You always have. I remember the closet in your room. You'd have things all lined up, and whether it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics or records. But that's interesting. So you have that program from 7th grade.
I have the program, yeah. And I remember that was a special one because there was a girl, and you might remember this name. Her name was Mandana Nikakari. Was that her name?
I don't know her. Mandana, that's an amazing name.
But for all intents and purposes, she won. She was a pianist, and she was amazing. I mean, we didn't hold a candle to her. She was really amazing.
How do I not remember that? All I remember is like every time you have a pianist, It's going to be Doherty. Oh, interesting. I don't remember her. That's so curious.
Yeah.
All right.
So we lost to a pianist in 7th, and we lost to a pianist in 8th. Alan's going to be watching this, so Alan, you won fair and square.
So you performed Glass Tigers, Don't Forget Me When I'm Gone, which also, if people don't know, a little background vocal there by Bryan Adams. So they're all Canadian artists. I thought you guys killed it.
Thank you.
Was that the same year that we also did? So we're dating ourselves, but also kind of dating our not dating our teacher, dating the time period that we did Led Zeppelin with the choir.
Yeah, I would say that was about 7th grade. That was before 8th grade. Yeah, so 7th grade. That's funny you should bring that up because we were asked, Don and I were asked to play Miss Skarchuk, right? That was her name. Yeah, Miss Skarchuk came to us and said, we understand you have a band. Can you help us out with the orchestra? And so I remember I had to leave my drums at Maloney for the weekend, and I needed a drum set to play. I was like, I remember this. I was like, 11 years old. But I remember I had to play that next day, and I couldn't play because the drums I don't know if the stage opened up and they shoved the drums in there, but this is all at Maloney in 1987, maybe? Probably 87.
Wow.
Yeah, because 88 was our year.
It was.
Yeah, so it must have been 87.
Yeah, I mean, it was such an odd thing to think about. Now, it's commonplace now where the school choirs will do contemporary or classic or pop music, but I know that, I don't know for your parents, and certainly for mine, it was like, you guys are doing Stairway to Heaven? Like, that's a strange thing for a choir to do. But looking back on it, I mean, that was pretty progressive of her as a director to say, hey, why don't we do this song? And it actually worked beautifully with all those voices for a middle school choir. It was pretty damn good.
And it was a great room to perform in. If I remember, I was young, and we were young, but it was a great room because the acoustics in that room. Because now it's different. They redid the high schools. I don't know if you know that. About 10 years ago, they redid the high schools in Meriden. But the room there, I believe it was about 1,000 to 1,200, maybe even more. I don't know. But the acoustics were amazing. And to hear that drum carry over, or that guitar, or the voices of the choir carry over. I mean, and I've seen many concerts there, through its existence. Really, really amazing acoustics. So it was perfect. It was perfect for a middle school.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was going to say, so we did that performance at Maloney.
That was at Maloney.
And not at Washington. See, so what's interesting to me about that is, oh man, I don't know if you know this, but I did like summer musical theater camp in Meriden.
Really?
And I cannot find a single bit of sheet music or scripts or anything from the show that we did. And it was the show called Teen. And I ended up like doing, for my audition, what was it? Oh, it was that song from Cats that was everywhere. Memories,
Yeah.
I ended up having this lead in this cheesy teenage melodrama at the summer camp program. It was called Teen. And if anyone finds that script or sees it, it is the most atrocious piece of garbage. But to your point, the acoustics in there meant that we didn't really have to have a lot of sound. We could do a lot of it just projection with voice, which was, I think, kind of uncommon. But yeah, that's a great room.
Well, I bring that up, and the only reason I really bring that up is now, here we are 30 years later. I don't remember them ever miking the drums. We were far from the stage. I mean, I don't know if you remember, you guys were up on the stage, and Don and I were like in the pit. So,
yep.
I mean, if I remember right, I mean, how did I hear everything enough to play the part? I mean, I don't know. It's, that's just a tribute to the acoustics in that room. It was perfect, and Don, Don's really not a loud player anyway. So, I mean, to hear him over you guys enough for me to catch his parts. Anyways.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah. It was fun. All right. So we'll fast forward a little bit. And so we mentioned Don. And so there's something we kind of have in mind that Justin and I have cooked up via text that that we're gonna revisit these subjects. So as we mentioned, the 7th grade year